Hello and welcome to episode 88 of the How to Survive podcast. My name's Chris. Joining me, as ever, is Joe.
Hello.
And we're in orbit this week, Joe, aren't we? Floating through space to discuss a film about an alien. An alien, Joe. An extraterrestrial creature that stalks and kills the crew of a spaceship one by one.
Yep.
And it's down to one woman. The most courageous quarantine officer on the spaceship to save the day.
Yeah. And this creature, Chris, is advanced beyond anything that we've seen before.
Yeah. And it starts out small, Joe. It starts out small, really small, and then it goes inside someone, one of the crew, and then bursts out, and it's much larger.
Yeah, that's right.
And then they can't find it, and then it's bigger, and it gets bigger and bigger as it kills each crew member.
Yeah. And then they're able to track it, aren't they? With
They're able to track it. Yeah, they're able to track it with a monitor, and then it turns out that it's gotten even larger, and it's grown a sort of a recognisable face.
Yeah.
And then one of them gets into an escape pod, Joe, but the alien's in there with it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a great film. It is, of course, Daniel Espinosa's Life from 2017.
Yeah. Where have I seen this before?
No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind. And its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again.
That's it.
The mission's primary goal has been achieved. We're looking at a large single cell, biological. I'd hate to jump the gun, but I think it's time. We're looking at the first proof of life beyond Earth.
You finally a daddy? It's gonna be a big custody battle over this one.
It's beautiful.
You!
No, you're not going.
Get your goddamn hand off my
Life stars Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds and Rebecca Ferguson among its cast, and we'll be discussing it in great detail, exhaustive detail, you might say, in this week's episode. So if you haven't seen Daniel Espinosa's Life, it isn't exactly what we just said in the intro. That was for the purposes of a joke, because some people, Joe, would you believe, some people think that this film is too similar to 1979 Ridley Scott film called Alien.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? It's
like it's set in space and there's an alien in it that stalks them off one by one.
Yeah, I think some people just think that, and it's not actually, it's just
really different, isn't it?
Well, it's one of those opinions, isn't it? It's like everyone jumps on the bandwagon, yeah. So, but if you haven't seen Life, then make sure you go and seek it out. It should still be in cinemas, or available on DVD as part of the quadrilogy. So make sure you seek that out. So let's crack on with the plot recap, as is tradition, and after that we'll be discussing the film and then talking about how we'd survive in it, in and around it, in orbit of it.
And with it in us.
Yes. For the first time, Joe, a Mars rover is able to send soil samples back via a probe, which is intercepted by the International Space Station. The 6 crew members on the space station are Doctors Miranda North and David Jordan, Captain Ekaterina Golovkina, Pilot Rory Adams, Engineer Sho Murakami, and paraplegic biologist Hugh Derry. They discover a cellular life form in a soil sample, which they are able to revive. Back on Earth, celebrations ensue at the discovery, and the public name the creature Calvin.
Yeah. Is that after the famous physicist?
No, it's after the fashionista.
No, I think you'll find it's after a fictional high school from the movie.
Yeah, they're going to regret being the ones to name it. Oh dear. Hugh continues to work with the creature as it grows and displays increasing intelligence. After an atmospheric accident in the lab, Calvin becomes dormant. Hugh reanimates it with an electric shock, but the creature reacts aggressively, grabbing Hugh's gloved hand. The rest of the crew look on in horror, unable to break the quarantine, as it steadily grips and crushes Hugh's hand. It's a sort of like amoebal, starfish type, octopus-esque thing at the moment.
Where to put it? An amoeba starfish.
Yeah. Calvin releases the now unconscious Hugh and uses a probe in its box to tear the glove and escape confinement. It attacks a lab rat, appearing to encase and consume it, which is very creepy. It skins it and shaves, skins, and then sort of like...
Well, I thought it was kind of burning its skin off with acid or something.
Yes, it's weird. Rory decides to break quarantine to rescue Hugh, which he succeeds in doing, but then is trapped inside the lab when Calvin grabs his leg. Rory attempts to burn Calvin using oxygen candles and an incinerator, but Calvin forces its way into Rory's mouth and down his throat, killing him. And now enlarged Calvin escapes through one of the lab's vents. And it should be said that Calvin appears to get larger each time it consumes something, and it seems to feed off oxygen and matter, like all carbon-based life forms. Yeah. The crew attempt to contact Earth, but the communications are cut mid-message. Captain Cat goes outside to attempt repairs, but encounters Calvin, who latches onto her, breaking the coolant valve in her spacesuit, and her helmet starts flooding with giant globules of toxic water, which is pretty distracting as she's trying to make her way back into the ship. Rather than let Calvin back inside, however, she allows herself to drown inside her spacesuit, which is pretty grim. Calvin attempts to re-enter the station through the thrusters, with the crew's attempts to stop it throwing the ISS into a decaying orbit around Earth. They use the last of their fuel to return to safe orbit, thereby allowing Calvin back inside, but plan to seal themselves in a single compartment while venting the atmosphere in the rest of the station, hoping Calvin will re-enter dormancy. However, as they're in that capsule, Hugh suddenly enters cardiac arrest, and the crew find Calvin feeding on one of his legs. As we mentioned before, he's a paraplegic, so he's unable to feel
notice.
Yeah. Now grown into a much larger tentacled creature, Calvin chases David and Miranda into one compartment and Show into a sleeping pod. Hugh dies. A Soyuz capsule arrives to scuttle the ISS into deep space, which was a contingency plan set out by Miranda, but Show thinks it's a rescue attempt and in the confusion causes a breach which vents him into space and crashes the capsule into the ISS, damaging its life support systems. Calvin also does not get vented into space, so it all went a bit wrong. Running low on oxygen, with the ISS once again in decaying orbit, David and Miranda each take an escape pod, with David volunteering to sacrifice himself by luring Calvin into his pod using the oxygen candles and flying into deep space as Miranda returns to Earth. This all goes perfectly to plan, despite one of the pods crashing through a satellite and veering off course. Only it doesn't go completely to plan, Joe, does it? Because Miranda's pod is the one that crashes, causing a malfunction which sends her hurtling into deep space, never to be seen again. Meanwhile, Calvin wrestles control from David and flies the capsule to Earth, landing in Southeast Asia in the ocean. Despite David's pleas, some fishermen open the capsule and presumably bring about the end of the world. And as my namesake Chris Morris says on Brasseye, this is the one thing that we didn't want to happen.
Yeah. Do you know what the one thing I didn't want to happen was?
Yeah, go on.
Get into it earlier.
Yeah.
I didn't want to see another shit film. With fully predictable, fully derivative, full of tropes.
Yeah.
But that's what happened, isn't it, with this?
So what did you think about life, Joe?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm not down on it, right? I'm not down. I'm not like depressed about it. I liked it when I was watching it, but it's shit, isn't it? Be honest with me.
I don't think it is shit. But why don't you get it out of your system?
Okay. Well, it was so full of tropes that it felt like a remake, right?
Yeah.
But I wasn't quite sure what it was remaking, other than like every space survival movie that's come before it.
Right.
Right. So
it's Alien and Gravity, obviously, isn't it?
Yes.
Those are the two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then every shot you're just like, oh, seen that in Gravity, or oh, that was an Alien.
Right.
It's like it's not. If you hadn't seen either of those films, maybe it would be really good.
I think if you lived in an alternate reality where Alien hadn't come out and Gravity hadn't come out, then the plot and all that would be mind blowing. It'd be revolutionary.
Yeah.
And the special effects, like the zero G and the debris in space and all that sort of thing, would be like astonishing, as Gravity was when it came out.
But I think.
But we don't live in that alternate reality.
Exactly. Yeah. Like in a reality where one of the most influential films ever wasn't released, then yes, you're right.
Yeah.
However, it was, and this is obviously influenced by it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, like, do you remember when we watched Battle Royale and The Hunger Games?
Yeah.
And the author of The Hunger Games said, "I've never actually seen Battle Royale."
Yeah.
And you're like, well, you have.
Exactly.
It's like if Daniel Espinosa went, "Oh, actually, I've never seen Alien."
Yeah. What's Alien? Don't know that one.
Ripley Scott.
The problems start there, and they continue.
Okay.
CGI isn't scary.
Okay, so you're okay, right?
I just don't find
like in comparison to the Alien in Alien,
which is like a real effect. There's a real unit of mass in her face, and she was reacting to it.
Yeah.
Whereas this, they have a similar shot where Sho is in his like sleep pod, and the alien is up in his grill.
Yeah.
But they're separated by glass, safety glass. But he's just like panicking. But obviously, I'm just thinking the whole time, like, it's obvious that there's nothing there.
Right. And
CGI, I'm just like, I'm just trying to break apart the CGI, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay.
But that's that one. That's like a good part of it. But when the part that really bugs me is when it's still in this like little incubator thing, and it's running around, and it's like it's like a gremlin.
Right.
It's like a cartoon rabbit or something. It's like, yeah, I got you. And it goes over and it grabs the instrument.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah, I'm gonna use this.
Okay.
It doesn't actually say that. But like its mannerisms suggest like it's like looking around like, huh?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that took me out of it. That's not that scary.
Okay. Well, to present a counterpoint at this point.
Yeah.
The bit that you're describing with Sho is where, by that point, Calvin has evolved to sort of grow a face, like a recognizable facial feature.
Yes.
That for me was when it became not scary, or like not as scary. I found it quite.
The whole point of it, right, was they were like, oh, every atom in it is both muscle and brain.
and then also so every atom is identical.
Yeah.
But it's all things to every point. Yeah. So it's like all of its muscle, all of its brain, all of its eye. Yeah. Right. So why is it near the face? Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm going to cut you off, but I'll come back to you.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just go.
You just leave it.
I'll go in the next capsule along, and then you can.
You take notes for a while, and then afterwards you give feedback.
Right.
I think you're going to say something similar. You're going to say about the face, but the point of view shots as well. You see like Calvin's point of view, and it's like I'm just thinking like, well, you're seeing this from like a fixed position, like, but all of it is eye. It doesn't make sense. This isn't how it would see the world.
That's fair enough.
A like slightly fuzzy look at the world.
It would be seeing everything in all directions at once.
Yeah, exactly.
And like that's just how it interprets information.
Yeah.
As opposed to
just seeing it through like a filter.
Yeah. It's a bit like the Terminator. Like, why would words come up on his eyes? Because he doesn't need to read. He's a computer. Like, doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for cutting you off, Chris. To go on with your join in my rant, please.
Well, what I was going to say was that I found it quite. I think when it's more like uncanny, it's more disturbing for me. Or like I found it more disturbing. When it's sort of like. Obviously, it's at first it appears just to be like a sort of starfish type, recognizable form. But then obviously when Hugh's trying to drag his hand out, it's sort of like tendrils come out and like attach the like grip onto the box and stuff. And I thought, that sort of thing is quite cool. And like as the film goes along, it becomes less and less like that, and more like here's one beast, if you know what I mean. Right. Apart from the like almost the final shot where you see it inside David's escape pod, and it's become like a mesh.
Yeah, and it's like pinning him down.
Yeah, like that stuff is really creepy. I think it's creepy as well when it's like when it kills Rory, Ryan Reynolds' character. That is like nasty, and especially as it comes, I think, quite intentionally just after the bit where you see it like atomize a rat. Yeah, and so that's in your head as it's inside Ryan Reynolds, and like the way Ryan Reynolds dies,
just like
it must just be
spewing blood.
Yeah, it must just be like atomizing his insides. Like it's horrific. Like that stuff I think is quite frightening, and like the idea of it going down like something from Mars, like forcing its way down your throat into your insides and then melting you from the inside. That's horrific. Like that is scary. I found that unsettling and frightening, which is what a horror movie is supposed to do. And I do think it loses that as it goes on, definitely.
Because like, it's the same as that you said with the Terminator thing. Like, why does it need a face?
Yeah. And like, I mean, the face just looked a bit like they were trying to do a xenomorph, like type thing. Yeah. So I think when he's just like this amoebal form, it's much more effective. What was the next point on your list of bones to pick?
Well, I remember when we first talked about the movie after we'd both seen it.
Yeah.
I said to you, like, a big problem I had with it was that you don't see any characters in a frame together at the same time. And it was, I agree with you, it's an odd thing to find annoying.
Okay.
But it's like, I noticed it about half an hour in.
Right.
And I was like, it's just, they're just like, it'll be one person on the screen looking like moody and be like, I don't know what you want to do. And then it'll be the other person going like, oh, let's make a move this way. But you never see them like at the same time, right? Which bugged me. But the reason I think it is because they're just not personal. I don't care about any of them.
Right.
I don't care about any of them, their relationships to each other. I don't care about anything about them getting home to Earth. Like, there's a guy who's got a child who's just been born. You're like, well, he's going to die because I've seen a film before. I know he's going to die.
Yeah.
No, everyone else is just like a cliche.
Yeah.
They're just really obvious cliches. Like, there's the guy who, I hate everyone on Earth, so I just want to be up here with the stud. Then there's like the by the book like captain who's like, no, we'll do everything exactly how we should. And then there's the biologist who like has a soft spot for the monster, even though it's obviously. And you're just like, well, I've seen this before. This isn't like, all you're doing is like showing me in the center of the screen like a character being cliche.
Yeah.
And then another character being cliche, and then another character being cliche. We compare it with something like Alien, which you have to. Or Moon, or even, or Gravity.
Yeah.
All three of those films are ostensibly, even The Martian, they're ostensibly space survival movies, right? Mm-hmm. Now the thing is, you care about the character. There's a main character, there's a protagonist who you're like rooting for. And you think, I hope they achieve their goal of surviving. And there's a story arc for that character. They overcome something and they succeed at the end, or they die. Potential spoilers.
I think that I agree that the characters aren't well drawn. I think Ryan Reynolds' character is likable, but that's because it's just Ryan Reynolds basically playing himself. It's Van Wilder in space. Deadpool in space. You know, any Ryan Reynolds character basically.
Yes.
And the rest of them are very much just tropes. I think the one bit that made me feel for a character is Miranda when she's like hurtling into space, like in a fried escape pod, because that is very bleak. I mean, obviously it's bleak that an alien's going to ravage Earth, and you know, maybe that's why Mars went lifeless, because of this thing. And then, you know, like over centuries it just died out and then just turned into like cells that are just blowing around Mars like dust. But like, maybe that's what's going to happen to Earth. But there's something quite personal, and like to cut back to Miranda just like screaming in like terror, abject terror of just being lost in space forever, and meanwhile Earth is being ravaged. That is very bleak, and I think that's the one bit of like emotional connection that I felt in the film.
Do you know what? I'm not just saying this to be contrarian.
Yeah.
But that part, I was like, well, and I know you're going to say you filmed Dad, but I was like, why are you screaming? Like, you wouldn't be. I don't think you'd be like, oh fuck.
I think you would be screaming. I think you are being contrary there. You know you're being contrary because you just said, "Oh, you're going to say that I'm being contrary."
No,
so you know that.
No, I genuinely thought it in the film. I was like,
right, but whether or not you thought that, it would not make for a good film. If it cut back to fucking Miranda, you'd be going, "Oh, well, the characters, they don't even show emotion. It's ridiculous." Like when she's like flying off into space, she's not even that bothered. Why should I care as an audience member?
I was desperate for it to be over at that point, to be honest with you. But yeah, all right. It was obvious as well. The twist was.
Look, okay, right, fine. It was predictable. I think the because I left the cinema. Well, you saw it before me, and you said, "Have you seen Life?" I said, "No, I've seen it tonight." He said, "Okay, I won't say anything about it." Mm-hmm. So I said, "Oh, right, okay," and I assumed that you hated it basically because of the tone of your voice when I spoke to you.
Right.
Then I went to see it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this film, and I came out honestly thinking that maybe like the thing that he's going to say, maybe the thing Joe's going to say is that he loved it and like is slightly sort of confused as to why, or do you know what I mean? Like when you leave a film, because I basically left this film thinking like it wasn't good, but I enjoyed it a lot, and I think the things that I liked the bleak ending. I think there are other films that consistently get sort of everyone on the internet goes, "Oh, guys, this ending's so bleak, it's amazing." I think this in years to come will be one of those films because I think the ending is incredibly bleak. Sure. In the way that Body Snatchers or The Mist or whatever it is. I think there's a grisly level of detail, maybe only in the first half of the film, but like Hugh's hand and the rat and Ryan Reynolds' death and all that sort of thing.
I'll tell you what, I'll agree that the deaths, largely speaking, are inventive.
Yeah. And I think for a mainstream movie, that is something. This doesn't. They felt more like the sort of deaths that you would get in a sort of creative, lower budget alien movie than a star-led production with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds. I think the zero gravity effects are very good. I mean, like it's almost like we're so used to it now that it's like it washes over you. But that is like incredible. The whole film. Essentially they're in zero gravity and it sells it like pretty well all the way through, and I like the fact that it's a sci-fi horror movie that takes place now, because it's if it wouldn't be the most far-fetched thing for tomorrow to read in the news they found a cellular life form in a soil sample on Mars. That is a plausible thing in the modern day to happen, and this is like the absolute worst case scenario for what would happen would happen. There are problems, obviously it's predictable. I want to get onto that in a minute. I felt like there was a lack of chemistry between like especially David and Miranda. There's that scene with the whole goodnight moon, goodnight stars, all that sort of thing, which felt, and it's in the trailer as well, when they formulate the plan and David says, just leave me up here, I don't want to go back anyway, whatever, there's like a moment which feels like they're going to go in for a kiss, and it's almost like they've gotten to that point and that's what's in the script, but neither of them like each other enough, and that's just what happens. And like if it was a film where the characters had more of a bond and were better, the relationships between them were better drawn out, that's when the kiss would have happened. And that would have added a level of sort of pathos and drama, and
you'd care.
But instead it's sort of like slightly awkward, I thought. The Goodnight Moon thing, I hate like haunting readings of like children's books or nursery rhymes. because it's just like shorthand for like affected creepiness. It's just like, oh, let's just read this thing out, and like they read out. You hear Jake Gyllenhaal reading it out in the trailer. You know, when it's like shots of the chaos or whatever, and it's like good night moon, good night stars, good whatever, with the like trailer thing in the background. Right? I hate all that. And obviously getting the obvious out of the way, it is very, very much like Alien, you know. But then I feel like, does it being similar inherently make it not an enjoyable film? Like, I still enjoyed the movie, even though I knew, broadly speaking, or had, you know, a very good idea, broadly speaking, of what was going to happen. Like, you know, if you consider the whole, like, trapped on a spaceship with a monster thing to be a sort of subgenre, or like a modern folk story, you know, like that thing, whatever that, what's that term for, like, a story that gets told, like it becomes
it's an apocryphal story?
Or no, like a story of an archetypal story.
Right.
I think it was a fine retelling of that archetype.
Right.
If you know what I mean. Even if it was one that didn't push any boundaries. And I definitely don't think it's a film that's going to advance the genre in any way whatsoever, in the way that Alien did, in the way that The Thing did, or I would say in the way that Arrival did, in a very like different way. But that is a film about aliens and you know, a worldwide event and all that sort of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, it's not going to have the impact of any of those sorts of films. But I thought, nevertheless, it was a competent and enjoyable version of that film.
I'd agree it's competent, but like it's well shot.
Yeah, but like
it's a high quality film.
Yeah,
but that's where my praise ends.
Yeah,
no, really. Like I said, I liked the deaths, and I agree with all your points. I think.
I'm in no way like a staunch advocate or defendant of the film. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying Life is the best movie I've seen all year. Life is going to win all the Oscars. It's, you know, magnificent. It's flawless and all that sort of thing. It is, you know, a bit sort of like flat emotionally, and you know what's going to happen, and etc. and so on.
That's so boring. Though it's so boring. Like because like when you said about the storybook part, that he reads the storybook out loud at the end, I was like, they're sat there like all hope seems lost. Yeah, and I was like, you can cut the film in here and it would be a good ending. Just like they're fucked basically. That's the end. But then it's like I know because there's been silence for like 3 seconds. I know he's about to have like a sudden realization of what they should do. So he's going to look out the window and see like something's come loose, or he's going to there'll be a flash of inspiration across his face. Yeah, and then the book floats into frame. And I'm like, oh, great, it's the book. And he reads the book. And I'm like, just get to the point
it's
where
like Goodnight Air or whatever.
Get to the point where you find how to save the day in the book.
Yeah,
and he does it. I'm like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah. Like, look, like I agree with you.
Yeah. Every time
I'm like, you can't say that that's not a film that's not a scene that happens in 99% of movies. Yeah. And like that 1% is, you know, the alien, the arrival, the whatever. And like, if this film's big crime is that it's not like not up to the standards of not up to the standards of Alien, like that's one of the best.
There's a spectrum, and this is just vanilla, isn't it? Like as soon as they leave it in the room, you're like, well, it's going to get in the air vent, and they're like, oh, well, no, it's going to get in the air vent. Like, I know it's going to get in the air vent. How do you not know that? There's only one way out.
Yeah, but then like, you know, to play devil's advocate, that's like saying, oh, you know, don't split up when you're in a horror movie. Like these are they're just genre tropes, aren't they? Yeah. I don't think the monster loose on a spaceship genre is so densely populated that you can't make one of those films nowadays. Do you know what I mean? Like it's not like every Halloween we're getting Life 2, whatever. I mean, that said, there is an Alien film coming out like within the next 6 weeks, but then that's the first one of those since Prometheus, and Prometheus is a very different film to this, and arguably just as flawed as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, this film's not going to have a sequel, I'd imagine, and it's not going to be part of a franchise.
No, but which is a good thing.
Yeah, but that is a good film. That is a good thing. Like, the Alien Covenant, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's going to be wank.
Yeah. Well, we've seen the trailers. We've seen the film, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those where...
But then, like,
so
I mean, I it's almost like I'm reticent to come down too hard on this film, which is, for all of its tropes, essentially an original property, and does some, albeit not groundbreaking, but entertaining stuff.
Yeah, it's derivative, but still original. Okay, right, fine. I was entertained, I guess.
Yeah, well, you don't sound like it. You sound like you were fucking...
I'm just sick of, like...
I feel like you enjoyed it in spite of yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, you probably... I don't know. Like, you said to me that... Because we had this discussion at length, via WhatsApp, didn't we, basically? And before the recording of the show. And you said that you liked the film more in retrospect. Yeah. And I think I like the film less in retrospect. I think we've like regressed to the mean. Yeah. And so I think that it's like that is what it's a 3 out of 5 movie.
Yeah.
And it is bang average, but there's fun to be had, I thought.
I won't call it fun, but yeah.
Fun to be had in the bleak
Let's just talk about Calvin again for a minute.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's another... I think I sound like... When we get on films like this, where I don't like them, I sound like I'm ranting and raving.
Yeah, which you are.
I am a bit, but I want to know how you feel about this more than anything.
Okay.
So, Calvin, like they use the name Calvin, like, because some kid made it up on Earth. Which doesn't seem like... I know it's movie dad,
yeah.
But that's not how you'd name it. You'd name it after scientist or something.
Right.
But forget that. The fact that when it's like killed the whole crew, they're still using its like cartoon name. And Calvin's behind you. Oh, Calvin's gonna get us. It's like, we'll just call it the Alien or something. Don't try and put a name on it. It just takes you out of the action, doesn't it?
I didn't think it was an issue personally. I quite like the scene where Miranda's like, I hate it. Like, I know it's not scientific, but I hate it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just behaving naturally, but like I can't help but just fucking hate it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like you with the film, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's just, I mean, it's doing what it should.
Yeah, exactly.
It's doing what it needs to, but it's not impressive.
Yeah.
I'm not pleased with it. Do you not agree that, like...
I didn't have a problem with the name. No, it's just an arbitrary name, isn't it? Like, it could have been anything.
Yeah.
Like, would it be better if it was fucking called Darwin or like E1758 or whatever,
It'd be better if it was just nothing. Like, the Xenomorph and Alien doesn't have a name. It's not like they were like,
but they're not scientists, though.
Yes, they are. Don't be so hard on them.
Yeah.
All right.
That's called the asset in Alien.
Yeah.
By the only person who knows what he's talking about, which is the fucking android.
He's a scientist.
Yeah. He's a science man.
Just one more thing. Do you think, I mean, when we watched Independence Day Resurgence, or Revival, or whatever it was, I think I was a lot more down on that than you were. I think I feel like a similar vibe happened.
But that Independence Day Resurgence, like, I enjoyed on a level of like, this is shit.
Right.
Like, not in a... Like, Life I enjoyed on a level of this is all right and quite fun.
Yeah.
Independence, like, I enjoyed on a level of this is just nonsense.
Right.
And it's stimulating in the sense that it's just bright colours and like enjoyable, like romping.
That's all it is. But
yeah.
Do you think the fact that I'm so down on both those films and they're just both like 90 minutes of tropes?
Yeah, maybe you just don't like genre, straight genre films.
Yeah. Unless they're westerns.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, now that you've torn it to shreds, Joe, have you got any ideas of how you would survive life itself?
Yes. My first piece of advice comes from a movie we watched way back when.
Okay.
That is The Martian. Ridley Scott's The Martian.
Yeah.
Now, I remember reading the book for that, and every decision that's made is like they calculate down to like a millionth of a percentage point whether it will be a success or not.
Yeah.
And like they won't launch a rocket unless it's like 99.9999 etc. percent success rate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in this film, the amount of times you hear an astronaut on the ISS say something like, "Well, this is risky, but we're going to do it anyway," or like, "There's a huge risk involved." It's like, well, just don't do it. Obviously, don't do it.
Yeah.
Obviously, don't do it.
Well, what instances are there of them saying that when they catch the satellite?
Well, first of all, when they catch the out of control probe with using the ISS.
I mean, that's their prerogative, though, isn't it? It's like either we catch this because the probe has been damaged, basically, isn't it? And it's out of control.
Yeah.
Either
you get it or you don't, and if you don't, you haven't lost anything.
Yeah, you have, because if you don't, you've lost the opportunity to study Martian soil.
Well, you go back and get another one. It's not impossible to do that.
I think it's pretty difficult. I think you're underselling how easy it is to just send another rover to Mars with a fucking probe that they can launch. This is the first time they've ever done it, ever, in the history of mankind.
Yeah. Space exploration is really hard. And people, things blow up, people die all the time.
Yeah.
In the history of it, right? So, just like, let it go. Like, when the Challenger exploded, they weren't like, we're never going to do this again. They were just like, we'll just build another one.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
NASA has lots of money and lots of like funding to do things like this. They would just write it off.
Well, Donald Trump's just cut NASA's funding.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So you've embraced yourself.
Maybe that's why. That's they're like, Trump's not going to let us.
He's seen Life. Donald Trump's watched an early version of Life and he's gone, oh, there's no way what if that happens? We're going to be fucked. Yeah. I mean, in The Martian, it's a bit different because the people making the calculations are either scientists who are like in their labs at university, just in a relaxed, controlled scenario, or Matt Damon's character who essentially has nothing better to do. Like, once he's made his den safe, there's no short-term, like, time-critical decisions to be made, really. Like, it's all just, how am I going to get enough food to survive? How am I going to build a rocket to fly up or whatever? Yeah. Whereas in this, it's like, they've, like, broken co-worker's hand.
But then I think they say, like, don't go in there, it's too risky. And he's like, no, I'm going to go in there.
Yeah, but then...
But you're an astronaut, so you'd be like, you're right, that is incredibly risky. I'm definitely not going to go in there.
Yeah, but he doesn't initially, does it? Like,
but he does it.
Yeah, I know he does eventually, yeah, but that isn't out of character for the character that you see in the first 20 minutes of the film.
It's not out of character, but it is, to come back to the How to Survive idea,
it
is not, like, the most optimal thing to do.
Yeah.
And you know it as well.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm not contradicting.
I'm not saying
that.
You know. I mean, as the character, as the astronaut, you know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
As Ryan Reynolds,
I think in doing that, he's accepting the risk, isn't he? Basically, he knows that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So, or like he knows that's a risk that could happen. Yeah, I mean, he wants to save his friend, though. So you can't change it. You can't change the actions of a character, can you? Like, if it's, you know.
Well, again, you make a hard calculation and say, look, we're not going to put more lives at risk.
Yeah.
But like the firewall, they even discuss it in the film. The firewall is there to protect us, and there they are, just like breaking the firewall themselves deliberately for little reason, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, it's to save the life of their colleague.
Yeah, but like if you were on fire now and I'm like coated in gasoline, I'm not gonna like jump on you to try and put you out.
Yeah,
because I'd die. That's basically what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, slightly more nuanced than that.
Yeah. If you were in a room with a bear,
Yeah, and you're made of meat.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to go like, hey, I know what to do.
Yeah. No, I know exactly the point that you're getting at. And yeah, it is an all right point. Do you know what I mean? I think you know that it's basically like going, oh, he runs in to save his mate. Don't try and save your mate.
No, I'm saying they if it was just like a normal slasher movie, then that would be the case. But the fact that they're astronauts who are trained in judgment about risk.
Yeah, but then you're it's almost like you're contradicting yourself by saying that, because they are astronauts who are trained in doing all that. Yeah. So it's like he's doing that from a position, he's taking that risk with all that applied knowledge. So it's like he's doing that knowing full well what all the risks are. Yeah. And so it's like he's made that calculation, and to him the risk is worth it. So it's like saying, you know, he wouldn't do that if he was an astronaut, but he is an astronaut and he did do it.
Right. Yeah. Don't fall in love, sort of thing.
Yeah. Like I know what you mean. Like they would have been better if they followed more stringent scientific procedure. I think like by the time Calvin's out of the lab, it's sort of all bets are off with that on that department, because it's just. Yeah.
But up to that point, there's several times where they say this is risky, and then do it in unnecessarily. I'd say.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah. Yeah,
that's all I can say. Go on.
Yeah, no, it's a yeah. I do know the point that you're getting at. When there's an atmospheric leak in the lab.
Yeah.
And Calvin becomes dormant, and because of the loss of atmosphere.
Yeah, sure.
When Hugh is having his hand gripped, is there a reason he can't just like crank up the, nitrous oxide or whatever in the box, whatever gas it was that there was too little of or too much of? Can he not just adjust the atmosphere to try and make him go dormant like straight away again?
I imagine he could, but I don't think he's having every bone in his hand broken.
It's the same issue really, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, if you're
Jason Bourne, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Can you get them to apply, sound scientific principle when you're having your hand crushed in a vice?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess so. That was just more of a question, really.
Okay.
Obviously, How to Survive top tip. It links into what you were saying, really. Listen to the experts. Yeah. Dr. North, Miranda North. She's the quarantine expert. That's her one job on the ship is like doctor specialist in quarantine. Yeah. So if she's saying maintain this quarantine at all costs, then don't charge him, but he does. But then later on, of course, Dr. North has these, the third firewall is the ship. Mm-hmm. The third firewall is the ISS. And they send the Soyuz capsule to just kick it off into deep space, basically. Yeah. Which I love the fact that that's just a thing. Like, this completely plausible thing for them to do is just to like cut their losses and just go like, just get rid, just send it into the infinite void, because it's like so frightening that we just need to get rid of it.
This goes back to my point though, doesn't it? They're willing to dump the entire International Space Station, but not one probe.
Yeah, yeah, but the relative risks are different.
But they're not, because they all they know is something went wrong. They don't know what went wrong.
No. The relative risks, I mean, between the first instance is them trying to catch the probe, and then the second instance is them trying to prevent a potentially dangerous alien life form from reaching Earth.
Yeah.
The risk of when they're trying to catch the capsule, I think is like a relatively minor one. It's basically you might damage the ISS, like absolute worst case scenario, Rory might get killed because he's in the path of the probe.
Yeah, right. I'm doing an untethered space flight as well.
He is tethered.
He's not tethered. They're tethered later on. He's not tethered at that point.
Well, he's got his jetpack on,
right? Yeah.
Thing, like the whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a jetpack. Yeah, but that's not going to be good if you're unconscious. All I'm saying is.
Yeah, well, look, he's a risk taker. That's like his character being established.
He's not a good astronaut.
Well, Yeah, but fine. Like, I agree. Like, I don't know what the point. Like, you keep going, the things that he's doing, then he's not a good astronaut. It's like, yeah. Like,
Go on. Sorry for interrupting.
Anyway, basically, if she doesn't tell the rest of the crew this is part 3 of her plan. If she had done, Show wouldn't have assumed that this is their escape attempt or their rescue attempt when the Soyuz capsule arrives. And so he rushes out of his hiding place to the capsule to try and be rescued without realising that he's just going to open the door into a vacuum. Yeah. And if he had known that was the plan, then he would have been like, well, that must be the pod coming to scuttle us. So what I'll do is try and get to an escape pod. Mm-hmm. As opposed to what I'll do is try and get into that other capsule and then end up in space. Dead.
At the risk of sounding like...
broken record. Yeah.
Well, this is something that... It's not just in this. This is something I think in every film where there's a space vacuum break, which is every space film. Mm. How much confetti do you have on your space shuttle? Do you know what I mean?
It's just debris, isn't it? Like,
it's all like bits of paper.
Yeah. And in zero gravity as well, that must be really annoying. Yeah. Like, it's constantly flying. One thing I did like was that the hole gets jammed up with just like crap, and then stops the vacuum briefly. Yeah. So I enjoyed. So basically, if she'd told the rest of the crew, Show wouldn't have opened the door. There wouldn't have been all that chaos. The capsule wouldn't have like bent round and smashed into the ISS, causing the life support issues, which then later lead to it losing altitude and falling to Earth, which means that they have to get in the escape pods and fucking Calvin ends up on Earth.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So just a bit more communication.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah.
It isn't got to be a secret, has it?
No. Like, I mean, I assume she's not telling people because they might find it unpalatable. But everyone she does, well, the only person she does tell is David, and he's just sort of like, yeah, all right, that makes complete sense. Yeah. So, yeah. There you go.
There you have it.
Any further ideas?
The next one I've written is just Ryan Reynolds deserves to die.
Okay, all right.
So I think this goes back to the...
Yeah. Oh, do you want to tell me about how he's not a good astronaut, Joe?
He's a fine astronaut. He's an inspiration to all of us, but... what he did, mate, was like deserved to die, didn't he? Because he put everyone at risk.
Okay.
He's what's wrong with the world.
Yeah.
His decision to go in there is why it went wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I have to say on the matter. There's not much more I can say.
I mean, without him, they wouldn't have caught the probe in the first place. So he's literally the architect of all the destruction.
Yeah. If he'd been dead before the film began.
Yeah, if the
film had opened on him and then just turning the ISS just to knock him into space.
Just bats him into deep space, unconscious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No coming back from that.
No. That'd be grim. Yeah. No, don't go into dangerous quarantine. I mean, it's the same point again, isn't it? Exactly. Don't break quarantine.
Yeah, don't take risks.
Well, on a similar vein then, again, it's involving the character of Rory. So you can get a giant robot arm that can catch satellites, but you can't get a little robot arm to play with potentially dangerous alien species. Yeah. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. That's fine.
Yeah? Like, because if they had a robot hand in there, robot arm, and they're electroshocking it, and then it grabs the robot arm and then crushes it with its immense strength, everyone would have gone, wow, that's very impressive strength. Hugh, imagine if that was your hand in there. That would have been bad, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God it isn't. Anyway, we should probably lock this lab up and jettison it into deep space.
Yeah.
Just whatever issue comes up, just jettison it into deep space.
Yeah.
Like at the first possible... if
that room had a window, they could have just opened the window and that would be it.
Yeah. Just like a normal double glazed... yeah. So yeah, just why don't they have the technology is in the film on a large scale. I'd imagine it's easier to make a small scale version of it than it is a giant version.
Not quite as dexterous though, is it? I mean, the robotic arm that they catch the
dexterity
with isn't like a hand. It's
no,
like a
but
pincer.
what dexterity does it need? Like, what is Hugh? Hugh's not like playing the piano in the box, is he? He's just waving his hand next to it, and then eventually he picks up a probe and like jabs it with it.
Yeah.
That is something a robot arm is capable of doing.
You think?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you got robots which are dexterous now. Like, you could do a little arm, definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Are they there?
Would you disagree?
Are they there just for that job, or are they there?
No, it's like they make a point of saying it's not really set up for it. That box isn't really set up for it.
Right, shouldn't have done it. It's a bit risky.
Yeah.
It's almost like...
What, going into space is risky, you say?
Yeah.
Well, here's one final thing to think about, Joe.
Go.
There's one way that basically every character could have survived, and that's by not provoking Calvin.
Yeah?
Before the loss of atmosphere and him being electrocuted to be woken back up, he seems perfectly friendly. He's waving back and forth.
Yeah.
He's being curious and all that sort of thing, like a little Disney Pixar cartoon alien.
Yeah.
Right? And then throughout the rest of the film, he doesn't attack anyone who doesn't attack him first.
Really?
Well, let me go through the list. Hugh electrocutes him.
Yep.
And he gets his hand crushed in retaliation. Rory repeatedly tries to burn him, first with a candle and then an incinerator.
Mm-hmm.
And he kills Rory. He never directly attacks Kat. He just like holds onto her as she's climbing about the ship. She's like, she says, "Oh, it's squeezing," but it's never like
trying to kill her.
Yeah, like, well, you know, potentially anyway. Show tries to drag him into space.
Yeah.
And so he basically doesn't allow himself to be dragged into space.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't necessarily, we don't see him necessarily attacking Show. We see him holding onto his leg again. And David tries to fly him into the great abyss, never to be seen again, and he just stops that from happening.
Yeah.
So to me, that's direct cause and effect. 5 instances of direct cause and effect. Someone assaults or endangers Calvin, and he retaliates in self-defense.
Do you think that's deliberate, or just
what, on the part of the filmmakers?
Yeah.
Possibly.
Bit of ambiguity.
Well, maybe.
Bit thin, isn't it? Thin on the ambiguity.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good reading of it, mate. So you're saying just if he comes in,
just be nice,
stroke him like a cat.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if rather than electroshocking him repeatedly, Hugh had tried like gently massaging him. And he's got his hands in there, you know.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good rule for life generally, isn't it? Just be nice to people.
Just don't constantly attack people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In that sense, maybe I owe an apology to
the film Life.
Yeah.
Well, if you've got any thoughts on life, just in general, email them in.
I've got some thoughts on life.
Yeah.
Should we go over them again?
No, please don't. Please do not. Anyone who wants to hear them again, I'm sure you can rewind about an hour and a half of the last bit of podcast. But yeah, if you've got any thoughts on the film or any other films, if you want to suggest a film, then email in howtosurviveshow@gmail.com. So next week we've got a listener suggestion, which is Oculus. We've had a few people suggest that. Actually, is it Mike Flanagan film?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think about Hush last year.
Yeah, from about sort of 2013. So Oculus is an evil mirror.
Nice.
Yeah. So far, unbroken ground for How to Survive. Yeah. So tune in for that one next week. You can get in touch on Twitter at HowToSurvivePod, and be sure to rate and review us on iTunes, because that really helps us out. And so until next week, goodbye, Joe. Goodbye, listener. Goodbye, iTunes. Goodbye, podcast.